Hello everybody, hope you're doing marvelously well. In this episode, we're going to concentrate on the basics of starting a mix. Now, this is a good thing for beginners, but it's also an amazing discussion point for anybody who's even intermediate or advanced. For me, the best way to start a mix is to just open it up and get the balances and the panning right. So let's get going. So here we have a song by a band called Me and the City. The song is called The Owl Song, which is actually a song we've used in the Academy. So those of you that are Academy members will know the song well. It has several basic elements. It has a live drum kit, which is a kick, a snare top, a snare bottom, a hi-hat, rack, tom, floor tom, and then there is a tambourine. But there's also one snare and one kick sample as well, which you can blend, and a cymbal hit that was added. The bass guitar was only recorded with a DI. However, there are multiple duplications of it for different reasons. One, you can distort it. One, you could use different EQ settings, etc. But for our purposes here, we're going to start off with just the simplest of things. There is a stereo pair of acoustic guitars. There is one electric guitar part in the verses and one in the choruses. There is a piano print throughout most of the song. Of course, there is a lead vocal. There's also some multi-effects that I printed from the vocals, which are currently muted and I don't think we'll use initially. Then there are some backgrounds. So here is typically what I get most times. Often I'll get stuff which is non-committal and has a ton of compressors and EQs and amp sims and all that kind of stuff on it. If I get that, then I treat it as an instrument with all of those plugins on it. I don't think about it from adjusting the plugin. I say to myself, that is the guitar sound, that amp sim with that compressor and that EQ. This happens a lot because these days a lot of people are printing with DIs. In this situation, we don't have that and we're just treating them as final committed sounds. Pop on the headphones. As you can see, everything is set to 0. There's no EQ, no compression, not even any panning. So let's listen from the top. Now, obviously, the first thing you can hear is everything is mono. There are some stereo sounds, but everything is just coming straight down there. So my first inclination is always to get a balance that sounds usable straight away. And that would be, let's bring up the drums. Let's first of all get some more kick and snare going. Here's our live kick. It's just one mic, and here is the addictive kick against it. Here's our snare top. Add the snare bottom. And the snare sample. I just brought down the snare sample a little bit so it's more of a blend with the live snare. Now let's put in our overheads. Bring them down just a little bit for the balance. Hat. So the first thing I'm going to do is pan the hat to the right. Now, I personally always do audience perspective, but if you want to do drummer's perspective because you're a drummer, that's absolutely fine. Now, as far as the toms are concerned, I'm going to do, once again, audience perspective. So the rack tom is going to go about 20% over. So it's just visually to the right-hand side of the snare. And then the floor, I'm going to go about maybe 60% to the left. Let's have a listen. So that's a pretty straightforward drum sound. I think that the kick and the snare need some more definition. So I wouldn't be afraid to like maybe bring up the kick a little bit, both the elements, the live one and a bit of the sample. And the same thing for the snare. So that is like a very, very quick, organic drum sound. No compression, no EQ. But you'll notice everything else is cranking, so. Typically with a tambourine, if it's playing at the same time as the hi-hat, I pan it to the other side. So if I do decide to go audience perspective and pan my hi-hat more over to the right, then I'll pan my tambourine more over to the left. So we're going to put the tambourine over to the left, and we're going to bring it down. Okay, now you see in the mix there, it's all starting to sound a little too cluttered. So definitely panning. But also, let's do some straightforward stuff. Let's create a group. So, depending on what your DAW is, there'll be a different method. But this method here is just to highlight all of the elements that I want in my group, my drum group. And I'm actually going to put my tambourine in as well, just for the heck of it. So this is all the percussion elements together. And that will allow me to quickly just reach for it. And now that I've created a rough blend, and just turn things up and down. Tambourine's going to come down. Now, as I was saying to you before, the bass is just a DI, and there's duplicated elements to create different sounds, but we're just going to deal with just the DI. So now I've got just the bass DI and the drums together. Let's have a listen. Let's slap down the middle. So just to recap, kick down the middle, snare down the middle. The hi-hat pans 60% to the right visually, if you're looking at it from audience perspective. The rack tom pan 20% to the right, again, visually from an audience perspective. And then the floor tom, 60% the other side. Now, we have the hi-hat over here on the right, so to balance it, we've put the tambourine on the opposite side. Otherwise, you're going to have tambo and hi-hat competing in the same area. And they have a similar frequency response, so it would just sound like clutter. And it's nice to have a balance of those two high-end instruments just kind of bouncing off each other. And obviously the overheads are stereo, so they're left and right. So the acoustic guitars, it looks like, and sounds like obviously, they're playing all the way through the whole song and mirroring the same parts. So why don't we just do this? Just take one and pan it to the left, and the other one and pan it to the right, and have a listen. Right, I'm going to bring down the bass guitar just a little bit, and now I'm going to group these acoustics together. Now whatever I do to one, I'll do to the other. So the first thing I'm going to do is just turn them down. All right, let's have a listen to this Les Paul here. So I have two remaining instruments here that we haven't looked at, and that's an electric guitar and a piano. So we could make a decision. We could go, well, let's take the electric guitar and put it maybe more to one side. So for this instance, we'll go like 60% to the right. I've also brought the electric guitar down. I'm going to jump to that piano and see whether we have to do something similar, but the other way around. Now I'm doing volume balance here. However, you can use all kinds of different things. In Pro Tools, for instance, you have clip gain. So we could actually highlight that and turn the track up itself, literally by grabbing this little tool here and just turning it up. And that way we could take it back to 0, and it's probably going to be closer. In your DAW, there's probably all kinds of ways of doing that. Another thing you could do is later on is grab a plugin and use some gain on that. But let's start at the source, getting a decent balance. So here we've actually taken the waveforms using clip gain and turned up the piano. Let's have a listen. Going back, I'm just going to bring up the snare a little bit more. All three elements. Now, there is a verse guitar as well, which I'm also going to pan in the same place as the chorus guitar because I want it to feel like one continuation of performance. It's a very live sounding song, very organic. There's no programming in it, so that would make sense. But I'm going to turn it down a little less than the chorus because there's less going on. Great, so now it's getting to be kind of a nice, rough balance. Let's have a listen to the vocals.
Even when I'm holding late, and all my mind has slipped away from me, promise you'll be by my side and we'll...
Great, so we have a ton of backgrounds here, and I actually want to listen to them in context as they are at the moment. Now they're quite well labeled. You've got 8VA meaning octave. So because those two are the same, we can pan these two top vocals left and right. And then you've got 1 and 2 of fill. Let's have a listen. So those are the same as well. So we can pan those left and right if we like. And then we have a... Okay, so there's just one of somebody else's voice, the singers. So let's listen to all of those together. See what we have. So the lower ones, I'm going to center a little bit more. So what I'm doing is I'm going to have the highs on the very outside, so they're like a little ear candy. I'm going to have like the lower ones a little bit more tucked in, and I'm going to have a center low one as well. So it's going to be like an enveloping sound, because this is a hook in the song. And then we have the gang vocals here, which is really just the two voices. Again, we can pan those around a little bit. I want this to feel like guys in a room. I want this to feel random rather than really orchestrated. So maybe the panning now can get a little bit more irregular. So those super lows, let's slightly offset them from the center. Nice. So what we've done now is we've sort of randomized it, keeping the lower ones closer to the center and the higher ones a little bit more panned out. Definitely feels like a bunch of guys in a room. Let's have a listen. So that mix there is just volume and panning. That's all I have done, volume and panning. Okay, so let's listen to the files without any panning or any volume automation, just as they came. Obviously, you can hear the tambourine is extremely dominant. Everything is pretty mono, and the kick and snare in particular are lost. Let's go back to what we did. So what does that teach us? It teaches us really the power of panning and volume. It really is as simple as that. Now, obviously, I can apply compression and EQ. What I've done there is began the journey. So the best way for me to hear the song is to take the elements that I have and pan them around and balance them so I can get the best possible mix just using those two things. Obviously, mute is another thing as well. There might be a part that's just really bothering you. Get it muted now. Even arrangement changes. These are a great time to make those decisions. But immediately, just those basic moves that I did allow me to hear the song and where I could go. For me, I hear things I want to improve, but they are fairly logical. But because I've got a mix that is usable now, I can make better informed decisions. I'm not going to go in there and decide that the kick and the snare sound absolutely dreadful and need like a new sample and stuff like that, when really it's just a case of like balancing the volume better. So this is the way I start with every single mix. Go in there, volume balance, and pan, and it will give you an amazing roadmap of how to get going. Hopefully that helped. As ever, please leave any comments and questions below. Give us a bit of an idea about how you start your mix. Is it similar to this? Do you have a different methodology? Please like and subscribe, and if you haven't already, please go to Produce Like a Pro and sign up for the email list and you'll get a whole bunch of free goodies. Have a marvelous time recording and mixing.